Well, in a few seconds it might be a minute or two. Russ has got a bit held up because he's teaching his group of theatricals, and he's just finished. So he's just gone up to his room now to sort of relax a little, and then he'll come down again, I suppose, about 5 minutes. So in the meantime, this, by the way, is my husband, Harry. So if you want to ask me a personal question, yeah, so let's get started. If you want to shoot some questions, yeah.
Do you notice similarities between one Hartnell and
Do I notice a similarity?
yes, between actors and like playing, because they said, I guess it's Willow said there's a lot of similarities.
Would you do me a favour? Would you come to the front? I'm going to ask you all, actually, if you could just come to the front and speak into the mic, because I'm sure nobody else can hear either. And if you don't know what I'm answering to, then just turn it around. That's it.
Did you notice some similarities between William Hartnell and Richard Hartnell?
It's funny you should ask that. The answer, of course, is yes. Have you all seen The Five Doctors? Yes. Richard Hartnell was absolutely brilliant, wasn't he? It was quite creepy for me, because of course I've been rehearsing with the man, and he was very good to work with. What was so nice for me is that he was a very tactile actor. You know, there's this thing that you find out very quickly in rehearsals whether the actor you're working with is a tactile actor or not. And if you are a tactile actor and he's not, she's not, it can be very difficult. I'm a very tactile actor. Can you come to your body, Harry, please? I mean, I tend to sort of talk to people all the time like this and say, yeah, well, you see, the way I see it is so-and-so. I mean, what do you think about that? Do you think it's a good idea? You see, and a lot of actors don't like this hands-on approach. And Bill Hartnell and I were both tactile actors. If you remember, he always had his arm around me. And I always had my arm around him. Always cuddling each other the whole time. And he's always patting me and patting my shoulder with my hand and things. And so it somehow made it very easy for the grandfather-granddaughter relationship to develop. And what was so nice about Richard Hartnell is that he had the same sort of tactile approach. So we did develop a really nice relationship during rehearsals. But what was so extraordinary, I'd never seen him in the full doctor gear until we were on location in the middle of a Welsh mountainside. And like he was on one side of a hill, and I was asked to approach him for a camera lineup, and he was standing with his back to me. And as I approached him, I had to say a line. And he turned round, and my heart sort of went boom, because it was Bill standing there. It was extraordinary, because he never ever at any time tried to impersonate Bill. And yet I think he really got the essence of it, don't you? I think he really got it very well indeed. And he was terribly anxious not to let the fans down. Terribly anxious. But I think he did a really good job. And I'm very pleased to be working with him. Any more questions? Yes?
I've got one for Harry.
Can you hear him, or should we ask him to come to the mic?
I was just wondering, I was watching the Cover Denise thing last night, and it looked like you were wandering around in the background, is that correct?
You were wandering around in the background of the children in need thing.
Yes, I was.
You don't tell me. Actually, he wasn't, but my daughter was. My daughter was in the crowd. Can't now tell you who she was, but she had very long dark hair, and she's lovely, and she's full of energy. Any more questions? Yes?
The Reign of Terror.
The Reign of Terror? Thank you very much. It's my gin and tonic, I think. Sorry, can we have that question again? The Reign of Terror? Oh, yes.
Have they ever been
Yes, but it's not yet been put out. I don't know what they're waiting for, but there was some, I was talking to John Nathan-Turner about this, and he said, some reason, all the incomplete ones, they're holding back for the moment. Maybe it's going to be released next year. For those of you who don't know, this is the incomplete Reign of Terror, incomplete in as much as it was a 7-parter, I think, and there were only 4 of the episodes which have been recovered. And I did the link in as much as they played the first 2 episodes, and then I told the story of the other 3, and then they played the other numbers, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 2. I haven't seen it myself, so I can't tell you what the result is. But John says it's very good, and it's going out next year. I don't know when it'll come over here. Yes?
So neither of you have any good stories about Jacqueline Hill and she died. I just want to hear your reflection.
The question is, do either of us have any good stories about Jacqueline Hill, who unfortunately died recently? He's very much missed. Russ?
Good stories. Well, perhaps not in the way that you mean. Jackie was a very dear friend, and she worked with us for the whole time that Carole was in the series, and went on a bit longer, but she left with me. And I find it quite honestly rather difficult to speak about it, because I was very fond of her, and she suffered greatly. She died of a very painful cancer, which didn't stop her bringing up 2 children and looking after her husband. But I think that my memory of her was nothing to do with illness. My memory of her is always to do with humour and wit, and I feel that she had a hard struggle in life. She was a girl who began from very poor beginnings in the Midlands of England, where I was at school, and we would recognise each other's humour by then. And she worked for a chocolate factory called Cadbury's. And Cadbury's, as you know probably, is a Quaker family. And they believed very much in helping the people who work for them. And they realised, I think very early on, that Jackie had a remarkable histrionic talent. And they helped her. And they sent her to drama school, and she was always very grateful, and would always go back there and help them as they had helped her. It was a terrible thing.
I'd just like to say about Jackie, I didn't know her as well as Russ, but I remember her very fondly from when we were working together. She was a very warm, lovely lady. Big smiles, big grins for everybody all the time. Very giggly, lots of giggles all the time. Very encouraging. And particularly so to new people coming into the series. She'd had 1 or 2 not so pleasant experiences herself when she'd been in other series. And she did ask us to make sure that anybody coming into our series was going to be made to feel very welcome and to be very much part of our family, which I feel sort of became. It became like a family for us. And we did make sure that everybody was very, very welcome. And this was due to Jackie, really, as much as hopefully natural wish for anyone to be made welcome. But Jackie was very aware of this and very insistent that everybody's welcome with open arms. And it's just a small indication of the sort of person she was. She was like a more big lady. Yes, gentleman with Clover scarf. What was it like being part of the old Dalek phenomenon?
But it was a surprise. We first met the Daleks when they didn't have a top bar. And so they were a bit like an inverted garbage can. And the actor who was propelling them sat in them and wheeled himself about as best he could. But we weren't quite sure that they were going to be the terrifying monster that the script was purporting that they were. But I think at that time, General de Gaulle was having a lot of trouble in Algiers and trying to end French colonial rule. And I remember buying an Evening Standard one day, which is London's evening paper, and coming back into rehearsal with it, and opening it, and finding a cartoon of General de Gaulle as a Dalek. I showed that to Bill, and he said, well, that's it, we're in.
I always thought they looked a bit like sort of tin crinolines. These little actors inside, quite graceful actually, sort of zooming around with these little crinolines. I mean, they couldn't go very fast, they couldn't go up and downstairs, and turn as fast as us.
Yeah.
But the fans loved them, and a lot of children were very frightened of them. Very frightened of them.
Yes, my eldest daughter was always nipping behind the sofa when they came on. They must have had something. I think it was a combination of not so much the lavatory plunger, one eye, but I think it was the wonderful voice that Peter Hawkins invented for them. I think that was the thing that gave them their terrifying quality.
I'd like to know from Carolyn Moore, why didn't you stay on longer with the program? William Russell, I just saw it, so Mr. Lancelot enjoyed it, and I'd like to know when that program ran.
My character wasn't really being developed. It seemed to me that she'd become very, very repetitive. I was being asked to do the same things in every story. And I think the unfortunate thing is that they made Susan 15 because, a 15-year-old girl is a very complex person and inevitably gets crushes on people, romances, etc. And I think she could have been a much more complex person and a much less fearful person. And I think she should and could have brought along with her the experiences of going to other planets, other times that she had been doing with her grandfather. And there were many, many things that I would like to have seen her do. And I was having constant arguments saying, why can't she do this? Why can't she do that? And was getting nowhere. And was actually being offered some very nice stuff, as an actor always is. I guarantee, as soon as an actor is in something, he's offered the most marvellous things to do. Because when you finish doing them, they're no longer interested. But no, there were some nice juicy things that I was being asked to do which I could not do, which were more, actually for me, more interesting than what Susan had become in Doctor Who. And I really wanted to get out, because I wasn't allowed to make her any older. She wasn't allowed to become 16, out of the bit, 17. And she was only allowed to be 16 when she was then married off and sent on her sweet way. So that's why.
Oh, right, Sir Lancelot. Sir Lancelot was made in a studio called Walton-on-Thames, which is to the west of London, and quite a famous studio because it was there that Mr. Freeze Green shot the first British film. It no longer exists, it's a supermarket now. But that's where we made it. We made it in 1956. And I think it started being shown in the States in the autumn of '56 for the first time. And because I came over to do sort of publicity for it, and that was a rather unusual story, because I was asked at the last moment if I would take my armour with me. They found they couldn't send it. It had all been arranged very quickly. Would I take the armour and change into it before I got off the plane? So I took the armour, and we flew in, I don't know whether any of you remember, but the airplane was a Constellation, and you used to go to bed in rather nice bunks. And I got to know the American couple, a mother and daughter, who were sitting next to me very well on the trip, and we chatted away. But I knew the awful moment was going to come when I was going to have to get up. And when I said to the stewardess, you know, when we were an hour out from Idlewild, as it was then, will you let me know? And she said, sure. And so, an hour out from Idlewild, she came along and said, an hour's time. So I crept back, and then I had to arrange where to change, because it was very difficult. And I asked if I could go in the steward's kitchen. And indeed, if they could help me, because I couldn't put the armour on by myself. So with a lot of giggles and laughs, we put it all on. And then I clanked back to my seat and sat down. And my friends of the night before took one look and never spoke again. When we arrived in Idlewild, in those days, there was the US health authorities used to fumigate the planes coming from Europe, and they didn't know whether to fumigate me in my armour or wait till I got out or whatever it is. Anyway, that was another hiccup. And by the time I actually emerged, all the photographers but one had gone home. So I emerged with a little flag that said, "Welcome, Sebastian." Saw one photographer in a freezing wind went, that was it. The next thing was to get through customs. Well, you must all have had experience of American customs. They're perhaps the toughest in the world, but they didn't think it was funny at all. What was I doing with these swords, and what was I going to do with all this armour? This went on for hours and hours. And finally, I had to call up the film company, who had an office in New York, and say, "Would you please come and rescue me, because I'm stuck," and they won't let me in. And they eventually came, and there was more argy-bargy, and then finally I was in a taxi being driven towards Manhattan.
Because of what you were man.
I got a question for each of you. You sound disappointed that Susan was married off when it was time for her to make it serious. You had a more dramatic exit in mind for Susan, and the other question is I'm confused about your name. Are you Russ? Are you William?
I'm all three. I'm all three. My full name is William Russell Enoch, and I started as an actor as Russell Enoch. And I did a film with a British comedian called Norman Wisdom, and Norman Wisdom was a very brilliant clown, but he was also very touchy about names, because there was, during the war, a comedian on the BBC called Enoch, and everybody knew about Enoch. So he thought this was a very bad idea that my name should appear in the thing. So for a whole year, I argued with the rank organisation about my name, and finally I became William Russell. That was the story of the name.
Susan, I sounded sad, did I, when I said I was shipped off to be married? Well, it's a pretty downbeat way to go, isn't it? suppose she could have been zapped out in a time capsule or something and been left to buzz around and around space for eternity. I don't know how she could have gone really. I mean, any suggestions? How would you like to see me go? Anyone got any ideas? Let's rewrite the script. I should say something. Yeah.
Heading up the council, being invited to go home and rule the hour.
Oh, yes, that's nice. Nice one.
Getting our own TARDIS. Getting our own TARDIS.
I should have my own TARDIS. Yeah, why not? I mean, I could drive our TARDIS as well as Bill, couldn't I? And I knew how to locate, alt locate. Any more questions? Oh, lots. You mean mind you? There, purple shirt.
I just wanted to ask about your appearance on Carole, David Griffiths.
Yes.
So, acting as a blind person.
Not once you sort of got over the initial focus. There's a thing about playing blind people. Have you ever played anyone blind?
I haven't.
You've got to get that thing of your eyes going out of focus. And once you've got that, you sort of hold on to it. It's okay. It gets a little difficult when there are studio lights, which sort of suddenly turn on. I don't know, it didn't seem to present any huge difficulties to me, really. The only difficulty it did present is I had a scene, I was telling you so earlier. I had a scene where there was supposed to be an attempted rape on me. And it took place at the top of an enormous sweeping staircase. And the thing was choreographed, as these things always are. And the man who was supposed to step in to actually do the bit of sort of grabbing me, rolling down the stairs with me, etc., was a very well-known stuntman, so I was assured I was in good hands, I'd be perfectly all right. So we choreographed this thing up and down the stairs, good times, it seemed okay. So when it got to the final shoot, he went a bit bananas and sort of grabbing me in all directions. And I was wearing one of those low-cut pleasant blouses, which were all the thing, then you see show and everything. And he was supposed to grab at me and sort of pull me down the stairs by the back of my blouse. So we did this thing. We both sort of tumbled over the stairs a few times towards the bottom, what have you. And I got up and I dusted myself down. I thought, well, that was okay. And I was surrounded by people saying, oh my God, you're right. I said, yes, I'm fine. Oh, you're not doing it. And I said, what is the matter? And somebody sort of walked me over to a mirror, because this was taking place in a big ballroom set where there were 4 walls of mirrors. They turned me my back to her and said, look, and my back was absolutely running with blood. And what had happened is that this man, in his enthusiasm, instead of just grabbing my blouse, grabbed my back and raked it with his nails. And of course, you know, when you're doing something like this, you don't realize it will be sort of excitement and everything. You don't notice. You very often do a fairly violent scene. And it's not until you get in the bath in the evening and you see all the bruises and cuts and things, you think, God, yes. It's funny, actually. So that was one. Yes?
It was my impression that the Doctor was originally conceived as an anti-hero, where he would get drawn into trouble and would be able to get it out. And eventually he turned into the hero. I was wondering if you had some comments about the metamorphosis there, and when you decided to turn him into the hero, and how long it took.
I don't think there was ever any doubt about who was the star of the show. Never. Whether you call him an anti-hero or a hero, it's just a name.
Well, in the first episode he tried to kill him and just get away.
That's right, yes. But this was really part of Bill's idea of the characterization. He didn't want to be bound by anything. He wanted to be totally unpredictable. And I think it was one of his strengths that you never quite knew what he was going to do.
Plus our toes. Someone talking to us back there? No?
Oh, sorry, it's another. I don't honestly think that we considered him an anti-hero. I mean, I had to do in a way all the sort of action man stuff. I frequently argued with him in the series about what was the right way to do it and the wrong way to do it. But as I say, I don't think there was any doubt about who was the star of the show. I think his ideas were that Doctor Who should be a rather irascible and unpredictable magician, really. Not, you know, he treated the TARDIS rather like an old motor car that he didn't quite know how to drive, but it would come right at the end. And I think this was all part of the charm that he brought to it.
I think a lot of his personality, his own personality, came into it, especially one aspect of his personality, that he didn't suffer fools gladly. And that came into the Doctor a lot, I think.
Yeah.
So would you say that he had as great an influence on the creation of the character as Cindy Newman and Mary Lambert had initially?
I would have thought they gave him a reasonably free hand. Would you, Ross, what do you think?
Yes, I think it's very difficult to say, quite honestly. I mean, Verity did have a very strong control over what was happening, and she certainly had ideas about it, which she was never afraid to put forward. However, we could argue it, we certainly did, but I think it was really the normal sort of exchange that happens between an actor and a director and a producer. I don't think it was anything extraordinary. I mean, these things go on all the time. This is, I don't think there was any, I mean, I think the only sort of perhaps serious flaw was in Carole's case, because Carole felt that she wasn't being used in the way that she had been promised, and therefore that was part of the reason why she goes.
Yes? She's got a deep voice.
How hard does it feel to be remembered for a role you did almost 30 years ago? And can you give us the one big thing you've done since then?
One big thing. You guys have a few. Yes, I mean, I think amongst Doctor Who fans, maybe I am remembered for Doctor Who. If you go to my hometown, I was remembered for a performance I gave when I was 14 at Lancelot Cockle. And if you go to other places, you'll find different things. One of the things I've done in the last 15 years is work much more in the theatre. So I've traveled a great deal in that capacity, and I've enjoyed myself enormously. I've played Don Quixote, and I've played lots of plays and musicals. So although you may feel it's Doctor Who, I don't.
Yes, well, I'm sort of vaguely in the same boat. I haven't done quite such illustrious things as you have. But after Doctor Who, again, unfortunately, because the character I was playing was 15, I did tend to be offered more or less repeats of the character I was playing. Anyway, as far as the television films were concerned. There was no way that I could have even attempted to do something on television that would have been accepted happily, that was anything removed from the Susan character, I suppose. Not for a long time, anyway. I also dashed off and did loads of theatre, where thank God they do welcome you if you've been on television, because it puts bombs on seats. And they do allow you to experiment more, especially as I went off into the provinces and played many, many, many varying kinds of characters. In England, we have things called special weeks, where they have the regular company, but then sometimes they have visiting artists come and do a special performance. And I did a few of those. And I did a few tours, again in musicals and straight plays. Huge variety of things, which I absolutely love doing. I'm about the only actor I know who enjoys touring. I love touring. Did a couple of films, nothing worth talking about. What else? Yes, oh yes, I finally did get back to the box. And I thought, this is going to knock them stone dead. This is going to get rid of any ideas they had about me playing Susan, characters like this. I turned down quite a few characters which were virtually identical to Susan and waited for the one. Now this the one was the part of a prostitute. And this is going to do it, it's going to knock them in the arse. And the funny thing was that it was a very, very good series, Public Eye. And I was to do the one that launched it. And it was a no-holds-barred thing, really quite a raunchy part. And I did it, and I got very good reviews for it, but I got absolutely castigated by all the parents of all the children who'd been allowed to stay up and watch me in this television play, thinking they were going to watch another performance of Susan. I really got some quite threatening letters saying, how dare you do this, you know, my children have seen you and loved you as Susan, and you go off and pollute their minds by doing something. You know, we're actors, we work in different parts, you know, you cannot just stay in one little category. So that wasn't very successful. And I tried one or two other things like that, and I just could not get away from what I was expected to be doing in television. So I sort of gave up there. Yeah.
What is your personal life? Okay.
Sorry, what do you want? My personal, oh God, I'm going to run now. My personal life. Yes?
What sorts of music do you both enjoy? And what are your favorite visual artists?
What sort of music do we both enjoy? Oh, you said personal. That's my personal life. Well, as you're addressing it to me, I love jazz, but I've got a very Catholic taste. I mean, I like the best of everything. So I love some opera, and I love a lot of classical music, and I adore most jazz. Pop music. I have an 18-year-old daughter. I hear it all day. And I'm sure you all know this. You have your favorite radio tuned into your favorite channel, and you go to switch on thinking you're getting your channel, and you get. So my head's a bit sort of bashed to pieces by all her music. Occasionally, I quite like something that's on of the modern scene. But I must say, I don't really like it. I'm a sign of age, isn't it? But it used to be much better in my time. Well, my time was a Jesus, let's face it. So, Derek.
Well, I really don't know, because I have 4 children, and they entirely monopolize all the gramophones and televisions and radios in the house. So I don't get to listen to much music, but perhaps in the car I do. And I, because perhaps I'm very familiar with the pop scene through them, I tend to play classical music on the car. And there I suppose my taste is very sort of middle of the road. I like Mozart, Beethoven, and all the pops really. As far as visual artists are concerned, I'm not quite sure what you mean. You mean painters? Yes. I mean, I stopped sort of somewhere in the 19th century, I think. I haven't advanced a great deal. My son is a painter. He's always taking me off to wonderful exhibitions where we look at a piece of old concrete and a corrugated iron wall with a hole cut in it. He said, "This is great." And he rang me up the other day to say that the Turner Prize, which is a very prestigious prize in London, was won by a woman who filled a house in the east end of London that was about to be pulled down with concrete. Then they pulled it down and they left this concrete. The other contestant tipped 3 tons of rice onto the floor of one of the big London galleries, the Tate Gallery, and made some designs in it.
Designs in straight lines. Neon tubes going.
Oh, were they?
Yeah.
You know, Carole knows more about it than I do. I find that difficult to appreciate. By the name of art, I think.
I'll tell you something that Harry knows what I'm going to say, one of the two, I'm sure. Some time ago when my 18-year-old was only about 6 or 7, perhaps even younger, we took her to the Tate, and I think the Turner Prizes had just been allotted, and we went along to see what they were. And in the middle of the floor was this pile of old rubbish. I mean, literally a pile of old rubbish. It's old metal, bits of old tin cans and things, and around the side of the gallery there were a couple of glass pieces, and in one of them was a rusty sardine tin, and so on and so on. I mean, similar exhibits throughout the gallery. And our daughter was being taken through these things and being told this is great art. They won huge prizes. And so she's very quiet, very thoughtful, and as we came back through the gallery, she stood in the middle of the gallery and she was wearing Wellington boots and pouring rain. And she took her Wellington boots off and she stood them in the middle of the gallery and she looked at them and she knocked one of them over and she stood back and she said, "Is that great art, Mummy?" Because when she was much older, about a year or two ago, we went to the Tate Gallery in Liverpool, and there was some more, nothing changes, you know, over the years, the same stupid stuff is being thought of as being great art. And there was some rows of mouldy bread. Remember? Rows made it, well, that's even a bit better, maybe she would have had noticed that. And things like that, you know. Oh, there was another thing. What was that thing? A shelf with nothing on it or something. Anyway, similar sort of things, right? So we were talking to the curator of the museum, and we told him what our daughter had done. And he said, now you see, the point is that if an established artist had taken the Wellington boots and done what your daughter had done, that would be perceived as great art. I mean, where do you go from there? What do you have to say? Man with the camera.
Yeah, I was wondering what it was like working back when you had to do very long shots within one take. You were pressured to do that, and you were inside a studio. There was hardly any location shooting. How was it like working under those conditions?
Well, I think it was very nice because you had a chance to play the scene. So often today you're doing tiny little bits of things, and it's very difficult to keep in your mind the continuity and the feelings and the objectives that you have as an actor. So I would say I always liked it. I don't know whether you remember a Hitchcock film called Rope, but Hitchcock there just sort of let the actors get on with it for almost 5 minutes. He was taking very, very long scenes. I personally, as an actor, I think it helps you. I don't know what Carole thinks.
Yes, I prefer to do something in sequence like that without you sort of, I'm sure you know how the film is made. I mean, we would be doing the last scene on the first day of shooting and the first scene on the last day of shooting, and it's all upside down. And it amazes me always when I see films, knowing how they're made. And it seems to go smoothly and people look the same. I mean, some days you come feeling really grotty and some days you come feeling very to go, but somehow or other it all looks the same in the film. I don't know if you've seen Dracula, the most recent Dracula, the Francis Ford Coppola one. But he's a man who thought, really the way to get these actors producing what I want them to produce is to have long, intensive rehearsals. And I know that some of them didn't enjoy it, and some of them did, but I think it's a pretty extraordinary film, that. And I think that he got the performances that he got, perhaps because of this. So, I mean, there are a lot of people that do think it's a shame that we haven't actually got this habit of shooting in sequence. It's very expensive, of course, you can't do this, because, if you've got set A, you have to do all the scenes in that set, whether they happen at the beginning of the film or at the end of the film, and then you bring another set in, and you shoot everything on that set. You can't keep taking sets down and putting the sets up, But yes, I would much prefer to start at the beginning of the story and shoot and carry straight on. Yes. The only thing I do remember is that we had one or two problems with the set, and it was a bit flimsy. There was no way of reshooting, so there were some peculiar moments that one could actually see when it was finished.
I know, like in the early 60s, fandom wasn't the way it is nowadays. And I know like William Hartnell did a lot of a few personal appearances in the early 60s. What were the fans like? And did you do personal appearances kind of like he did?
Not at all, no. I think we were, personally speaking, I was unaware that there were any fans. I knew people liked it because of the letters I got, but I mean, there was never anything like this. It was never
Well, I did actually. Practically every one of my weekends seemed to be occupied with doing something.
There you are.
I don't know why you missed that. But it seemed to
No,
me
I don't remember ever going to anywhere that he interested in. I don't remember that.
well, I seem to be constantly opening fates. Yeah, every weekend. Fate here, fate there. Not like this. There weren't conventions like this, no. But I always seem to be occupied doing something to promote Dr. Hill. Yeah?
Mr. Russell, I was wondering if the character of Ted Sullivan on Coronation Street was intended as a temporary character, or if you had expected to be online.
No, it was intended as a temporary character, yeah. When you go to work in something like Coronation Street, they are very, very unwilling to tell you how long you'll be in it, or what the story really is. They're amazingly secretive. I couldn't get anything out of them. I said, well, what am I going to do? They said, well, it'll all be over in 6 months, but something will happen to you in the middle. And the more we talked about it, the more I thought it was quite an interesting character to play, because he had this strange ambiguity in his life. You didn't know what it was, and I certainly didn't know what it was. This is partly to protect them. They feel that the British press is incredibly insidious. It really tries to find out what's going to happen to all the characters in Coronation Street. An amazing appetite they have for it. And so when I got married to Rita, in a big hotel in Manchester, we were told the night before that the two most notorious rags in the letter press in England, the Sun and the Mirror, had first taken rooms in the hotel, and they were going to have to smuggle us in and set up a another marriage at another part of the hotel while we got married in another room far away. And indeed, it's the first time I've been into a hotel the back way under a blanket, but that's how I went in. And we managed to avoid these people. They thought that the ceremony that had been set up, the false one, was the real one, so they were all there. And we were at the other end of the hotel, quietly getting on with that off. It's an amazing phenomenon, Coronation Street, because I had never done anything that made me so instantly recognizable. I mean, I stayed in a hotel in Manchester where I was doing it, but I couldn't walk to work without people shouting, "Hello, Ted, you're going to marry her," and all this kind of thing. Every day. It was impossible. Instead of waving here and there. It is an amazingly popular program in England.
Gentleman at the back.
Your cast had a unique experience. You got to see two of your episodes translated into film with other actors playing the roles. First of all, what do you think of that? And the fact that in Susan, in your case, Caroline, your role was reduced to a 9-year-old or 9-year-old girl. What happened with her totally after those two episodes? Because the only reviews I've ever seen, she got all the good reviews that everybody else had out.
So what do you actually ask?
So what was the reaction of your cast to the fact that the other performers played your roles? So what they did in the movies, and secondly, what happened to Roberta Toby?
Well, they did actually spend about 5 hours in makeup trying to make me look 9, but it wasn't very successful. No, I think actually when they did it, we were working, weren't we? We were doing Doctor Who. So
yes, we were. Yes, we couldn't have done it. Yeah. But of course we were furious. We weren't asked to do the film. But it was unavoidable. Yep.
I want to either one of you have watched the documentary on the program and what it was like for Carole to come back to the show for the 5 Doctors.
I haven't watched it very much, I have to confess. Sorry. Because as soon as I left it, I went straight off into the theatre. And of course, I was always on when it was being shown. And at that time, nobody had videos. So you couldn't record it. So I sort of lost touch with it. Occasionally, I just sort of switched on just to have a look to see what was happening, but I didn't really recognize it. Because I don't suppose I watched it about 2 or 3 years after I left it. I think it changed tremendously, and sometimes I was very envious about what various assistants were getting up to. And wished that I had been allowed to spread my wings a bit again. But some of the things have been very exciting, I think. Some of the special effects have been absolutely wonderful. And some of the acting has been very good. So I'd like to get hold of some of the videos and have a look at them. I might jump into the video room here and have a look.
Somebody's making a sign to us that time is up.
Oh, we wind up. It's fine.
Oh, wind it up. Well, one minute, sorry.
Yes, question for you, William. In the first place, were you ever approached to appear in 5 Doctors? Like Carole. Also, I was quite pleasantly surprised to see you in Black Adder here in the States and that cameo that you did. It's very difficult to find anything here that you have been in. Are you aware of anything else that has been exported?
Robin Hood, I did a bit. I've done very little television because I was, the theatre company I was involved with was a touring company. And we spent a great deal of the time out of the United Kingdom. We toured in Europe, we toured in South America, we toured in Sweden. And so I really did lose touch with all those things. The reason why I did the Blackadder thing was because the man who wrote the script of Don Quixote, which was the play we were doing, was called Michael Curtis. And Michael Curtis is one of the prime movers of Blackadder. And he decided it would be very nice if I played this part. And of course I was in a different town every week, so I said, well, it's ridiculous. But he said, no, we can do it. And it was one of those things that happened to you as an actor. They would send a car to me in Manchester, and then I would travel down on the Sunday in the car, and they wouldn't get to me, so I would go back, and then they would have to send the car to Edinburgh, and I did about 6 journeys before I ever did the top. And in the end, I had to do it on a Sunday afternoon, which meant that I got a great deal of money for that one performance, so I was delighted. But really I did, in a sense, take myself out of television, yes. It was quite a deliberate thing, really. That's it, I think.
Have we got to go? We have to go somewhere else, yes? Right. Bye then.